Good evening. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting of June the 12th. Call us to order. Madam Clerk, would you read the roll call, please?
Mr. Shyland?
Present.
Mr. Moore?
Present.
Ms. Reclue?
Present.
Mr. Shiverdecker?
Here.
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Stone?
Present.
Mr. Vaughn?
Here.
And Mr. Braun.
Here.
8 council members present.
Very good. Full house. If you all stand with me, Pastor Bruce Williamson is with us this evening, and he'll lead us in the invocation. And if you, when you're finished, start us into the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll do that, sir. Heavenly Father, I'm going to begin with a general prayer for the middle part of our state. Some parts have had showers in the last few days, but generally, Lord, we're really dry. And living in a farming community, we pray on behalf of all the farmers in our county and surrounding areas that when you're willing, Lord, that you'll send rain to the fields and to the crops. We just pray that you'll intercede and help those who feed us, raise the food that feeds us every day. Then, Lord, I want to pray for those who serve this community and every community in America. They're the folks, Lord, that answer the calls, our police officers and firefighters. And I talked to some who were overcome with heat yesterday, fighting fires in this kind of weather. Well, I pray for them. I pray, Lord, for Callaway Ambulance and for all of our first responders. We must keep them lifted up, especially, Lord, in the extremes of this heat and weather. I thank you, Lord, for the community we live in and those that serve us, our mayor and council persons, and all those who administrate and lead the work of this city, clear down, Lord, to the boots on the ground every day that give us the lives that we cherish. I pray tonight, Lord, for those that are working infrastructure and doing construction, Lord, where there is no break from this heat, that you will protect and keep them as well. We have a number of folks, Lord, attending tonight who will participate in this session. I thank you, Lord, for the larger community that's here to share. On behalf of those that are tied to the city family, I continue to lift up Chief Myers, Mayor Benton, Mr. and Mrs. Reclue, and their daughter, Mr. Chyland, Mr. Moore, and anyone else that needs your touch on a daily basis. Our prayer is that you'll guide and direct this session tonight, and that the discussions that are held and any decisions that are made, we always pray that they are according to your providential will. This is our prayer we pray together through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Face the flag. Attention, salute, and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I noticed in the recent paper that Ms. Krausen had been honored with her certification as a Missouri clerk, as a municipal clerk. And by the way, the city is also having a meeting tonight. So I thought it was very appropriate. Again, we're very proud of Courtney and her accomplishment. She's worked very hard at that, and so I think let's stand and give her a applause.
Way to go, girl.
Thank you. That's very, very appreciative. Thank you.
Okay. Also, I do have a need to amend the agenda under, unfinished business. I'd like to add an item C, unsafe houses discussion and update. And so if I could have a motion to do that, appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to also add an item under new business for approval of purchase of Chromebooks for city council members.
Okay. We'll make that, make that an item B. Okay.
I'm sorry, could you say what the unfinished business was again, please?
Unsafe house discussion,
Okay.
just an update. Just kind of tell you what's been happening on that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second for approval of those items to be added to the agenda. Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good, those items are added. Beginning of every council meeting, we set a time aside for those who are with us visiting this evening that have a concern they'd like to visit with the council about, to do that, and we just ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes, and of course the clerk will time that. And I might also add that if you're primarily interested in the public hearing, that time for comments will be announced during that public hearing. So this is concerning anything outside that public hearing. So is there anyone present who'd like to visit or address the council over a concern within the city? Okay, very good, thank you. See, yes.
I have a concern I'd like to share.
Sure, please come to the podium.
I don't know, is this the correct time for the hearing?
No,
Not for
It
the
will be
hearing.
in the public
Okay, so
hearing,
later.
just a minute.
Okay,
It'll be
I'd
under
like to
public
address
hearing.
later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So, seeing no one that has an issue, we'll move on, and I'll call the hearing to order. Excuse me, our hearing this evening is to consider a rezoning of a tract of land at Rice Road and US 54. And the format will be as follows. There'll be 3 calls issued for anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the proposed zoning, and then there'll be 3 calls issued for anyone who's speaking in favor of the proposed annexations. So we'll now proceed on with that. I'll issue the first call. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition of the proposed annexation? Please come forward. If you'd just give us your name and address.
My name is Dan Smith. I live at 1403 Park Ridge here in Fulton. I know several of you and have known a lot of you since before I care to mention. But my concern is the rezoning of the property in question. And my primary concern is really several-fold. The first being the lack of infrastructure in the area. I'm not against low-income housing. I don't want that to be associated with why I'm here. What I am against is putting people in a position that have already more than one time explained their concerns and their oppositions to what is being proposed. We went through this last year, and we had several people willing to talk about this at that point. Unfortunately, that issue died, and so along with that went a lot of the concerns and things with that. When it resurfaced this year, a lot of people, I think, are under the impression that, well, here we go again. Why do we want to question this? Because it's going to happen anyway, whether we think it will or not. Of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what government's all about. Everybody agrees with that. Our elected officials from our ward have expressed their concerns. We've got a lot of people in the neighborhood that are against it. One of my primary concerns is a safety issue. Once it's built, if it's built, there's going to be a lot of foot traffic. And my concern is the foot traffic in the busiest part of the city, Business 54, crossing that highway. There's going to be kids wanting to go to that convenience store right away if there's kids in there. Okay? Of all the places in Fulton to shop, where do we shop? Do we shop on the south end of town? not as much as we should, but where are our businesses located? Walmart, primary business in town, other end of town. Are people going to walk there? Low income, maybe not get in the car like everybody. Question. I don't know. I can't answer that. But what I do know, being in a position much like yours for 20 years as a leader of a school, I listen to my people, and I'm asking that you listen to us. And we're asking you. I know our council representatives are listening because they have expressed their concerns. I've written personal letters to you, Mayor, last year. I appreciate the responses, but some of those members are no longer here, you know? So I just ask that we may do a little soul searching. Is this really what's best for the community? The school district is already opposed. We didn't get a second on the rezoning last time. That should tell you something. What does your gut tell you? Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. I'll now issue the second call. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition of this proposed rezoning? Please.
I'm Stephanie Smith. I live at 1403 Park Ridge Drive in Fulton. And Dan was my husband, just up here. And 20 years with our school system here in town, I can tell you that for when you have families...
Could you get a little closer to the mic? Thank you.
Okay. My concern is our school system and the success of our students. When we have more and more students in the classroom, our schools are not ready or able to pay for the personnel that are needed. If you look at the numbers, and also as Dan also said, that the school is in opposition also to this. What we need in Fulton are owners, not renters. Renters do not buy into the community. They don't buy into the success of the community or the success of the businesses here in town. If we want more and more renters, they pay less and less property taxes. So where does that money come from? We've got transient people already. We already have homeless people in town, and I would hope that perhaps the council would consider investing money into the communities that we already have, such as nice places for our elderly who would be able to pay for that. Also the deaf community that we have around us, and other communities that I'm not aware of. I am in opposition. I do live in the neighborhood. We do have legal issues out there. And also I'm aware of several calls to the police department out at different low-income housing. The owners do not fix it up. It was always promised that, yes, we'll take care of it. We'll do our best to maintain. It's not maintained. There's a 90-year-old resident out there that doesn't have a front door handle on her front door to lock because it's been torn off and the owners have not replaced it. Several phone calls that do not get posted in the newspaper have been placed to the low-income housing out here by the Phillips 66, and we have enough police calls in our neighborhood that we would not like to see that increase. And I'm just kind of curious as to why this keeps coming up and why, when we've asked that it be shot down and we're in opposition to this, that it continues to come around and come around and come around. We voiced our opinion. I'm aware that other neighbors in the neighborhood have also voiced their opinions, and please keep in mind that not everybody here is from, everybody from our neighborhood is here because we have several elderly people that cannot make it to a meeting like this and sit for hours or 10 or 15 minutes at a time. You also have working individuals in that neighborhood that are property owners that pay taxes and purchase things in town. We can't even keep a small chain like Maurice's in town. It's sad that we are placing emphasis on this low income to start from ground up when we have other infrastructures in town and with many other concerns that, I mean, I'm a community member. I invest in this community. I would hope that the people that we draw to this community are also owners and want to invest in this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll now issue the third and final call. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to this proposed rezoning? Please come forward. You don't have to raise your hand. Okay. Very good. Seeing no one coming forward, I'll now move on with the issuance of 3 calls for anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezoning. First call, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of this proposed rezoning? Thank you. If you'd identify yourself.
I'm having trouble hearing that back there, so I'm going to speak as close as I can. Where's your sound, man?
Yeah.
My name's Mike Bell. My wife, Julie, and I bought this property 11 years ago. And the reason we bought it, we were speculating. At that time, there was more than just a little bit of talk about building that second nuke plant. And I seen the MoDOT egress plan. It had to do with 9/11 or something. They had to put an egress road in, and it pretty much come out of that property. So we thought it was a real good investment. We bought it. It was already Zone C3. I didn't have a clue what C3 was. We really thought it'd be a really good place for a motel, C-store type thing. And then, of course, the nuke thing didn't go through. So we've been actively marketing it for 10 years, and nothing. And for just a buck or two more than we paid for it. We weren't hanging out for the big bucks. Anyway, we've been in contract with Zimmerman here for a couple of years, and I checked them out. They got the 2 places here in town, the one out there on F, and I drove through there a couple times, and I didn't see anything that made me nervous, what they got. Looks like they take care of it pretty good. You know, and the income thing I heard was like 12 to 18 bucks, which I think kind of fits the Fulton deal here. So I don't know where the major concern is. I do know that Zone C3 and C2, from what I understand, it's a little hard for me to interpret it, but it looks to me like you have a higher chance of higher traffic with C3. So the traffic thing was brought up, but we were at the zoning meeting with the last deal, and the issues with traffic, and I just thought that backing down to C2 would probably, not always, but probably create less traffic than C3. So I don't know if I see that as a concern. I think it'll be on what the individual thing you're putting in there, you know, but I don't see a problem with it. I think housing, I've heard people talk about housing around here. They need housing. I think it's a good deal. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to issue the second call, or is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed rezoning?
Michael Osborne, Call Valley Engineering, 14700 West 114th Terrace, Lenexa, Kansas, representing Zimmerman Investments. We provide the engineering services for them throughout the country, and obviously they're in contract with Mr. Bell to purchase the land, and I'm here to discuss the project in general. Obviously the primary purpose of tonight's hearing is to consider rezoning. When we look at this, it's not, is this a low-income housing project? Is this gas station? Comes down to what is the appropriate zoning for this parcel of land. This is a land use action being looked at tonight. Your current zoning of C3 on the property, as Mr. Bell has indicated, is more structured for large-scale development. If you read through your guidelines, it's talking about providing for planned use of sales of merchandise, sales of services, office space, recreation, and ultimately it can be a cemetery. The portion behind it being planned, yields the desire typically for a much more intense, and if you go through their guidelines, this would be a much more intense use than what is allowed in a C2 zoning. As going down zoning to a C2, you do open the door up for many more uses than are typically defined within your C3 plan. But those uses are typically much less intense than what is defined within your C3 code. And the guidelines you have within your C2 regulate that in a condition that keeps the intensity at a lower use than typically defined within your C3. The other problem that currently exists with the property under a C3 zoning is that it's 6.5 acres. The intent behind C3 is for like the property across the highway that's an industrial semi-service use that's on 20 or 25 acres. A typical C3 property needs at least 10 acres. Your code even specifies that it should be at least 5 acres to be considered for C3. We're at 6.5. We're barely over that threshold. One of the reasons that he can't find anybody interested in purchasing it is because someone who would bring in a use that would be intense for C3 typically needs more than 6.5 acres. If you were to put a Walmart, which would fall within your guidelines for your C3, that doesn't fit on 6.5 acres. That usually takes 30 to 50 acres to put it on. That set aside was put in place and typically is put in place for larger acreages. So when you get down to paring properties down to 6.5 acres, a C3 type zoning isn't necessarily what would work well for that, and hence is yielding the problems that he has in trying to find a buyer associated with property. Now, at the end of the day, is it the council's concern or issue to deal with whether Mr. Bell can sell his land? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. But having the appropriate zoning on the type of parcel is what the council's concern is, and when a owner of a land requests a rezoning, the council needs to consider, and typically does consider, various points that deal with rezoning. Throughout the country and throughout different boards, there's typically half a dozen items that ones go through and consider, does this work for appropriate land use? Some of the items deal with, is the requested zoning in conformance with the character of the neighborhood? Well, let's look at our neighborhood here. We basically have a highway on one side, we have a filling station on the south side, we have a 3 or 4 unit attached housing unit on the east side, and we have a large scale agricultural single family development to the north. And then north of there is a church, and eventually north of there is single family homing. I think the single family homes are almost approximately a half mile north of the property. So would bringing a C2 zoning, which if it does get C2, and if my client Zimmerman were to purchase it at C2, their general intent would be to use it as a mixed use development. They would like to take roughly 4 acres of the property, use it for a multifamily development, housing, and leave the balance of the 2.5 acres for smaller style retail, dry cleaner, things of that nature that fit in a smaller strip center that would fit on 2.5 acres. So you develop the mixed use, which is kind of in line with what the C2 zoning, it's not out of line with what C3 would be, it's just C3 looks at a more higher scale, bigger, intense use. Some of the other areas I heard infrastructure brought up, and that is one of the concerns that one looks at is there adequate infrastructure for the proposed rezoning change? Well, what does infrastructure actually entail? Roads? We're on Business Highway 54. Our traffic generation, if we put 48 units of multifamily residence in during peak hour, would generate roughly 27 cars in the morning during peak hour and 32 cars in the evening during peak hour. Peak hours looked at a 1 hour period between 7 and 9 in the morning and between 4 and 6 in the afternoon. If you look at Business Highway 54 during those times, would 27 additional cars entering and exiting in that area, which is quite a ways up when you look at the proposed site plan, 54 away from the intersection, away from the interchange, impact the traffic patterns on Business 54? No, that's a small percentage of the traffic that's there. Same thing in the PM. So far as a traffic impact on road infrastructure, it's adequate for what the property is. Your sewer lines are adequate, your water lines are adequate. When we come to cost to the city of infrastructure and we think about how that may or may not impact the city, all of the infrastructure for the site except the extension of your electric lines would be at the cost of the developer. Any of the entrances, any of the internal roads, any of the sewer extensions, any of the water line extensions, Those are all at the cost of the developer. When it comes to the electric, yes, the city's guidelines, being that they own the electric company, would bring the electric lines through the site. But at the end of the day, the income generated from the extra electricity sold more than offsets the initial capital cost associated with bringing the electricity. That's part of why you're in the electric business, is to sell electricity. The electricity sold on 4 acres for 48 units is much more significant than the electricity would be sold for 12 houses if you put 3 units to the acre on that same land. So ultimately for the city, there's a benefit in increasing the electric use on a smaller portion of land. So cost-wise, the city will gain income by having the 48 units as opposed to a less intense use if they were to go to single family. Now with an office building, something of that nature, probably greater, but your initial capital cost would be very similar. So at worst case, you may not make as much money as you would with an intense use, but the probability of getting that high of an intense use on 6.5 acres is limited. So this yields one of the better outcomes for the infrastructure outcome for it. One of the other areas that has been kind of discussed a little bit deals with how long has the property sat vacant under its current zoning. Mr. Bell has indicated he's attempted to sell the land for more than 10 years. Most looks at area, and I won't use the word blight, but under the guidelines of blight, when a property sits empty for an extended period of time with no potential use under its current planned use, that becomes a word that is in the planning and zoning guidelines. With that, another item is it in conformance with the master plan of the municipality? We received a letter from your previous planning commissioner, or planning department head, that indicated what we are hoping to do with this property in a mixed-use condition, residential housing and a retail space would be in conformance.
There's actually not a, no, I'm sorry, there's not a time limit during a public hearing. It's only comments from visitors.
So with that, when you think of the elements that are typically concerned with zoning, and we go through most of those that are outlined within most zoning codes, the need for rezoning this property is there. The rezoning requested complies with most of the guidelines that are outlined. And when it ultimately comes to beyond the electrical gain for the city, this is going to be a $5.6 million development. Hence, the property values to the city will increase exponentially, and therefore the taxes brought in to the city will be significantly greater than they are today, and even in most instances significantly greater than they would be under what type of a only retail development could be put together on 6.5 acres. So with that, I stand for any questions this council may have, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Okay. Very good. We'll now issue the third and final call. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of this proposed rezoning?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Kendall McPhail. I'm an attorney in Springfield, Missouri. My office is located at 2338 South Ingram Mill Road, Springfield, Missouri. And I want to address some of the concerns raised by the neighbors here, as well as also maybe rave a little bit about the program my client has been involved with and I've had the pleasure of working in for 15, 20 years. I've had the pleasure of working for this particular client since, I'm thinking about 1985. But it's very unfortunate that the project that we want to put out there is designated as low-income housing tax credits. It's very unfortunate it's designated as low income because I don't think that's a correct number of it. It should be, correct name of it should be qualified income. And you may be familiar with Section 42 projects already. It's Section 42 under the Internal Revenue Code because you have 2 of them here in your city already. And I understand that residents encourage you to be concerned about residents of the neighborhood, but I also want to encourage you and remind you that my client is a resident of the city as well. My client built Callaway Village 1 in 1999. 10 years later, we did Callaway Village 2. And I think those have been fairly decent projects from a performance standpoint and so far as being a good citizen of the community. But the Section 42 program, I say, should be referred to as income qualified because we're not going to have people as tenants who are lacking vehicles, who are lacking jobs, who are destitute. We have as our typical tenant in Callaway Village 1 and 2, school teachers at Fulton Public Schools, firefighters, nurses' aides, LPNs, employees of Fulton State Hospital, the Dollar General Distribution Center. To live in one of these communities, you have to earn a minimum income. You can't earn more than a maximum income to be a qualified tenant. And on this particular project, our income range is going to be from $30,000 a year to $42,000 a year. These people will be employed, and to get to their jobs, they will have cars. And so I don't think that that will raise a safety issue with significant foot traffic. Number two, I want to address the typical concepts in zoning is under Section 89.020 of the statutes, which authorizes municipal zoning. We're instructed that the first area of concern is bearing in mind the general welfare of the public. That's what we're to look at when we're considering a zoning request. And it's not just the neighbors, it's not just my client, it's the community as a whole. And so I would encourage you that when you're looking at this issue, and it's a tough issue, but when you're looking at it, you need to bear in mind the entire community. For example, at Callaway Village 1 and Callaway Village 2, we now have a waiting list of 125 households that qualify for residency that can't find a decent place to live. You've got an extreme housing demand in this community. Otherwise, my client wouldn't be here, and MHDC wouldn't be encouraging us to be here. The other thing I think you need to bear in mind is looking at the whole community is the experience that you've had with my client in this community. I believe we have provided council with letters of recommendation and support from the chief of police. My client's communities have never been a source of any crime issues, safety issues. And I think we got a rather glowing report from the police chief of the city of Fulton. We also provide support letters from numerous housing agencies affiliated in this county that have talked both to the experience and credentials of my client as well as the need and demand for housing in this area. And I would point out that we were very pleased to have a completely disinterested party attend planning and zoning, a young gentleman who pointed out that for younger people in this city, they are highly stressed on finding decent rental housing. Now, they're going to be future owners, but they've got to get on their feet. They've got to have that first job, that second job. They've got to climb that ladder. They don't become instant homeowners overnight. We've got to support those people too. And then I also want to say, maybe in a little bit of rebuttal to the concerns that were raised, is when we talk about, well, we're concerned about the school systems and we need owners, not renters. I don't understand quite the point that we're making there. Are we saying that we don't want any growth in this community at all? I don't think we're saying that. I don't think we're saying that we want to see 6 acres of beautifully placed real estate out here sit vacant for another 10, 15, 20 years and just lie fallow. And I think as the community grows, as we provide tip-top housing to those people entering the income stream at $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 a year jobs, they're going to become homeowners, and they're going to provide the growth of the city, and they're going to pay the taxes on top of the taxes that my client already pays to support those school systems. Again, I thank you for your time and due consideration of our requests. We hope to expand and be a bigger part of your community.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. That I'll now declare the public hearing closed, and we'll move back to our regular agenda. Thank you for all those who participated this evening. We'll move our next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is just for those items that we assume does not require a lot of discussion, and those items this evening include the approval of a 5K run by the annual Faith Maternity Care 5K. And they have that annually. Then we have the approval request from Mike Rimbush of the St. Peter's Parish to allow the MU Flight for Life to land at the St. Peter's Fall Festival. And then we also have an appointment of Nancy Lewis to the Historic Preservation Committee.
If there's no objections, I move that we accept the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Very good. Thank you. We'll now move on to unfinished business, and we have a continuation of the 54 business light discussion. Darrell, are you going to lead us in that?
It's a continuation of what we talked about last time. We did some looking after the last meeting, and some of the older fiberglass poles, they're needing painted, just to be honest. It's like any other fiberglass product, UV, gets into the gel coat. So some of the poles that was put up about 20 years ago, they're needing a little bit of work. We did talk to the manufacturer. They came by, they took pictures, they sent them off. It is a common problem with that type of a pole. They have made some UV improvements over the years, but that was a concern that we thought we might ought to point out to the council, that on that road, we may have to come back out there and paint those poles, and I don't know if we want to do that along that roadside or not. So I guess what we're talking about, maybe going to a steel pole there that would hold up a little bit better, and just see what you guys thought and gals thought about that.
When you say it holds up a little bit better, what are you saying?
Well, we've got some older steel poles in town that, other than they were black and they're still black, and they're, they might have a little bit of chalkiness color to them, maybe not a bright black anymore. But some of the poles in subdivisions of the fiberglass pole, the color's already gone. And where there was like a gray pole, it's got black showing through them. I think Mary probably has seen some of those in her neighborhood.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And you can just about write the date down. About 20 years, they're turning pretty bad. We do have a Sherman-Williams paint number to get paint with the code that the manufacturer recommends to put those poles back in good shape. But they definitely, the ultraviolet lights have worked on that fiberglass.
Darryl, what's the life expectancy of one of those fiberglass poles?
From what the gentleman talked to us, Bill was in there, we're about 20 years they need painted. And if you don't maintain them, they continue to deteriorate through the gel coats. We usually consider 30 years. Even on a wood pole, we consider a wood pole life 30 years. If we get that, we did good.
Okay.
And what about the steel pole? What would you consider its life?
Usually they consider those 40 to 50 years.
Okay.
Steel.
So basically what you're doing is asking the council to reconsider their previous commitment to the fiberglass pole and substitute that with steel.
It'd be a direct burial.
Did we not have steel going down 4th Street and fiberglass were going out Business 54, correct?
That's correct.
So it was like, if I remember right, like 27 poles going out 54?
Correct.
You're close. I did have an opportunity to drive through Sedalia this weekend in the dark, and the lighting guy that came by and talked to us from, I believe, American Electric, they have relit the main road through their town with some new LED Cobra heads, which we have a sample of it. It's out on the north side of town by the outer road where they redid the entrance off of Business 54. Those lights look nice at night. They go all the way through Sedalia.
Cool.
Need to check the spacing on those lights compared to ours, but it did light the road up nice and had a nice look to it.
Yeah.
We wanted to go to the fiberglass poles because there was a substantial cost savings.
Right, the fiberglass poles are about $800. The decorative poles about $1,300.
Right.
I guess it's at this point that I'd like to, I guess, repeat. I think we need to go with the more expensive pole that matches the look of what we've already done in certain areas. You know, I mentioned that at the last meeting, but I wasn't too vocal because it seemed like the tide was going to the fiberglass. But now that we're back to having a conversation again, I truly believe that it will make this town look a heck of a lot better and more consistent and give the look and feel that we're trying to give if we continue those steel poles, those decorative steel poles that look like the others, and we do that as much as we possibly can, versus immediately after the brick district going back to the run-of-the-mill, plain-looking pole that has no character whatsoever. I think it's worth the $500 a pole for us to continue that look and feel across this town.
Didn't we also talk about another pole in between those two? A metal pole and using the Cobra lights instead of the lighting on the south end of town?
Yes, the decorative light is one of the most expensive things. A decorative light LED is going to cost you around $1,200, $1,300, and an LED Cobra head is in the $250, $300 range. We do have two different arms. The top mount arm that's on the south end of town is about $420. The side mount decorative arms, $274. Those are the ones up here on this section, and I bet you none of you guys have noticed that they're different. But the arm, the top arm and the decorative light is what really runs the price up. The pole itself is not that much of a premium, but that decorative light is.
If I remember correctly, Darryl, that's what it gets us to around $3,000 a unit.
Right.
Is that the right number that I'm remembering?
You're close.
35?
Yep, about 35.
It appears that the life expectancy of the metal pole versus the fiberglass, even though it costs more for the metal, it might be a cost saving.
The metal poles we have existing in the city right now have weathered better than those fiberglass poles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely.
So you've looked at different poles in different cities, and you've looked at all the different options. You've looked at all the different heads, LED versus incandescent and fluorescent. What's your suggestion?
The LEDs 5 years ago was too high. They were too expensive to be worth the money. The prices came down the LEDs now to where you can get your payback on the LED.
I think it'd be nice too.
So what's your recommendation on the pole
Direct berry steel pole, black,
and the light?
Cobra head light, LED.
There you go.
Is there a motion?
Is that the decorative, or is that the plain?
The Cobra.
Cobra
The
The
lights.
Cobra
like
head is just the plain,
That's
not the
not-
decorative.
Like a
Right.
Right.
What's the cost?
The Cobra head's going to cost you about $250 a piece.
So you're talking $1,600 for a steel pole with a Cobra head?
With the arm, probably close to $2,000.
Okay.
More than that. It's more than that, because it's $500 extra for the pole, and then, so it's $750, $800 total by the time you get the light and the pole. Am I correct by that? I have the numbers from when we talked about it last. 85,000 was the total,
Okay.
if I wrote it down correctly, which I'm pretty sure I did, was the total if we did everything in the decorative poles, in steel, with the
Breakaway
current.
bays,
Yes.
everything that we needed to do.
And then 35,000 was the cheapest, and 58 was the mid-range.
So 58 would be a steel pole
Cobra head,
with a Cobra head.
side mount.
Well, we got two projects here now. 4th
Th- th-
Street
we're
is
not-
still,
4th Street's done.
4th Street's done.
Yes.
Fourth Street's
It's
the
already
decorative.
bid.
Yeah.
So it's about the 27
It's
poles
about the
roughly.
27
Yeah,
poles.
that go along with that.
So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we do the 27 poles in the steel pole breakaway base.
No, we don't need the breakaway base
Not
there.
breakaway, direct bury steel pole with the decorative head is my motion. If it dies there, it dies there, but that's my motion.
Without the decorative head, it's 41,850 roughly
Okay.
for the 27 poles going to the north end.
And these are all rough numbers until we get the bids in, but they're relative to each other.
So I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I just have a second down here. Okay. I have a motion and a second to go with the decorative head and steel pole. Any further discussion of that motion?
And do we know what the decorative head, what the decorative part of it adds to the pole?
You know, the decorative light is going to add, the decorative light LED is going to be about $1,400, and the LED Cobra head's about $250 if you go that way.
So that's an additional $1,150 per pole.
Right.
For
Match the rest of the town.
For 27 poles.
Not more than that, because you got the
That
poles
matches the
that are
south end of
involved in
town.
it, you got everything else. The light, the pole.
So the decorative head is what we already have on a lot of the poles?
The
South.
decorative
Correct.
head is what you see down by Sutherland's and going up right in front of this building
to
here
the
till
south.
you get to the
Yeah, they're a
lantern
decorative
type.
thing, yeah. You get like a little umbrella thing, yeah.
Do those poles have, had plugs for Christmas decorations, or those didn't?
No, they do not.
So just so I'm sure on numbers, because we've thrown around a lot of different, for one pole, one decorative light, and one to be just exactly like the south end of town,
You're close to $3,500.
$3,500 per pole.
With the LED.
And that's the motion that we have to use that pole. Okay.
Roughly 27.
So is everyone square or anything else?
They're figuring
So
it
So-
out.
now you're at, for those 27 poles, you're at 94,500, give or take.
So where's the money coming from? Because I don't think this is in the budget.
Out of the electric fund.
Yeah,
Electric.
that project was in the budget.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And, we started out with 3 sets of switchgear at about $45,000 a piece in the budget. We've reduced that to 1 set of switchgear instead of 3.
Okay.
We have at least 90,000 in the budget that we do not have to spend on the switchgear. Is that what you're saying?
In the estimate to put that project together, yes, that has reduced.
Is everyone ready for
No,
vote?
No.
no.
But we were $300,000
We haven't
over
got
as
a
well on
second.
that project
Yeah.
that we approved already as well.
So we approved that. The 300,000 we're over already. And now we're gonna spend another 100,000 on 27 poles. Did you say the other part come in cheaper to where you had the money for that? Is that what you said?
Looking at the electric fund only, that project, we had 3 sets of switchgear scheduled for that project. We reduced it to 1, and they was about $45,000 a piece.
So there's 90,000. If it's
So
45,000.
That's 90 and the lights are 94?
What you think?
Okay,
More or less a wash.
I'm done.
Okay.
I am.
Okay. I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor of Councilman Stone's motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All those opposed, no.
No.
1 no I have? Okay. Very good. Thank you. Very good discussion. Move on to the downtown grant update. Mr. Kyle?
Last we talked about this subject, again, the subject being downtown brick district improvements via a federal build grant. We discussed the proposition of hiring an outside company, Burns & McDonald, to help us write such a grant to get monies to improve the downtown area. After several meetings with the Brick District, historical folks, internally, Chamber of Commerce, there was obviously a lot of directions that the meetings went. Okay, what's important to people, what's not important to people. Hard to get everybody on the same page. Through those meetings, it was pretty obvious that what we needed to do in applying for this grant was really not apply for something that we're building when we don't know what to build. So it was obvious, this grant offers a planning side to it, to where we could take our time and actually go through these processes in greater detail and with more concern, and actually get what we want planned and compromised and everything else. So with that, I asked Burns & McDonald to kind of define the scope of what a planning grant, writing a planning grant, would encompass. What they provided was not very well defined at all. And after talking with administration, we felt that it wasn't very responsible for us to just be giving away close to $20,000 to a company that's not going to define the scope very well. And some of that is not clearly on that company. It's the grant. The grant itself is very difficult at that point to decipher what had to be in the grant. So kind of to sum it up, we decided, hey, let's hold off on getting in bed with Burns & McDonald and trying to write this grant. Let's give it a little bit. Let's take a look at the grant. And the grant required 3 webinars for us to sit in. Gayla, a grant writer, and myself have been through those webinars, and those webinars obviously made it a lot clearer to us on what is required in writing this grant. And we feel that though it's going to take obviously our time to do it, we feel it's more responsible for our dollars and cents here to do it internally. I agree. It was also discovered in those webinars that really this was the only pathway for us anyways, this planning side of it. Really the building side, all the historical reviews, all the environmental reviews, all the permitting and everything needed to be done ahead of time. So, we weren't that far along, so this is the avenue we really needed to go down anyways. Any questions?
Do we owe the contractors anything for their time and their visits? Any of that? Would it be appropriate to reimburse any of that travel that they did for us?
To this date, they have not asked for any reimbursement.
Understand.
Good enough.
Is it appropriate for us to initiate that?
I would say that we do we're actively doing business with them in other areas.
Thank you. I didn't know we were still actively working with them on anything. I thought, we had worked with them in the past. They'd been very good to us in the past and helped us a lot. I didn't know we were currently working with them on
And my answer to that would be, it is not unusual for an engineering firm to donate some time up front in anticipation of a project. As a form of marketing.
Understand.
And
so they just made multiple trips, so I just wanted to ask the question.
And I would also say, Jeff, that this week I've called them and said, hey, we're probably going to need some numbers on what engineering and surveying will be, so we can include that, you know, in this planning side. So, you know, he's going to work up some numbers on that, and you know, it's
Still very cooperative.
right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nothing else for Kyle? Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
We'll move on to the unsafe housing discussion. Dennis has been doing a lot of research here, a little bit of travel. He's updated.
We are looking at getting a program started for the city of Fulton to address the unsafe houses. In the last couple of weeks, we've drove around, have compiled a list of about 80 houses throughout the city. In the last couple of weeks, we also had the opportunity to meet with the city of Moberly and the city of Mexico to discuss their programs they have intact. Both programs are very aggressive. When we sat down with Mexico, their program seems like it would fit the city of Fulton. In their program, they basically send out a letter to the property owners and are asking legal permission to condemn the property and demolish the house at the cost to the city. Mexico has no intentions of recovering the costs of the demolition from the property owner. The hopes Mexico and the goals they have is that once the property is taken down, it makes the city a better place, gets rid of the unsafe property, and hopefully the homeowner or the property owner puts a new residential house up or sells the property, and a contractor will buy it and put a house up. After those two things happen, the city is now getting taxes for that property again. They're getting utilities, and in time, the plans are to recover the money through those two, through the taxes and the property, or the utilities. So with getting started with this, I would like to ask the council for approval of $100,000 to get our program going. We're still working on the process. Mexico is going to send us their paperwork and everything. Friday we are going over to meet with them to go through a hearing on one of their properties they're dealing with right now. If they do not get permission from the property owner, then they treat it, they use our unsafe ordinance we just passed. We go through the steps of it, and then the property owner is assessed the cost of the demolition.
Dennis, how many houses can you tear down for $100,000?
Looking at Mexico's, the last 5 years, they averaged $90,000 to $95,000 a year, and they were taking down 18 to 20 houses.
They are doing the demolition in-house.
In-house.
Yes.
In-house.
They are contracting out the asbestos abatement,
Yeah.
but as far as the actual demolition, they're doing that in-house.
Yeah.
And Bill and Robert and Daryl and Kyle and myself sat down, and we all believe that's something we can do in a safe and efficient manner here in Fulton.
Do we have the people?
How successful has Mexico been in recouping the cost?
I can't answer that. That's something I can find out Friday when we meet with them.
I'd be interested to know what that number is.
Sure.
It's really not their goal to recoup. Their goal is to get the eyesore gone,
Right.
improve the neighborhood, provide a buildable lot, and then over time, the taxes off of that property and the utilities off of that property and the other associated benefits of having another house in the community, that's where the city's going to get their money back.
How long does that take,
Well,
generally?
I don't know if it costs $7,000 and then there's $1,000 a year property tax.
Okay.
But it feels like an incentive for the homeowner to just let it go bad, so if the city tears it down. If I've got a property that's on its way to going bad, and I should be improving it, hey, if I let it sit for another year, a tree will grow up in it, city will come and take it down for me for free. clear off my property, and then I can start over again. It feels like there's that incentive.
Well, there will
In
be
Mexico-
instances like that. But if we sit back and do nothing, I
Well,
mean,
no, what I'm saying is not do nothing. I'm saying take the Moberly approach, where every property is assessed that cost. That we don't just go in and do it for free and ask permission. That we take the approach that we've passed with our ordinance to say, we're gonna come in and we're gonna give you a chance to make the property better, or we're going to do something with the property and
well, if we
charge
take,
you for it.
if we take it down and charge them for it, we put a tax bill on the property,
Mm-hmm.
then we have a piece of property, a vacant lot that we've taken a house down, say it's worth $1,000. Now we tack on another $6,000 to that. It's hard to get $6,000-$7,000 out of that lot that's worth $1,000. You know, if a contractor comes to the homeowner and the homeowner can sell it for what it's worth, $1,000, maybe $2,000, they buy it and put a house on it. We're getting taxes and utilities again. In most cases, and maybe Bill can speak, in most cases, does the city forgive a tax bill on a property?
There will be
when
a
they have-
certain amount of negotiation. If somebody wants to come in and buy it and there's $4,000 owed against it, we will maybe settle it out for $2,500 or something.
So we say we're going to use the city crews to do it. Do we have the availability to city crews to make that happen?
When we looked at it, we looked at maybe doing it in the later part of the summer, the fall, when they're not as busy. You know, the weather's a little bit cooler. Most of it will be done on equipment. And Mexico said to take just a single-story house down takes them about 3 days, weather permitting. They have it leveled off and grass sown or started.
Do they promote this project with contractors that when they tear these down, have a list of lots that is available?
I don't know if they, I don't think so. A lot of the lots that houses have been taken down in Mexico, the adjacent owner will buy the property.
Yeah, that's true too. Cool.
So where are you planning on your funding to come for this project?
Probably come out of the planning and protective services budget.
It'd come from the general fund. We've already checked with Oshlag, the funds are available.
Well, that puts me in a tight spot as much as I've always complained about them things.
You gotta go
We didn't get to participate in that joke down there.
So what are you looking for, Mayor?
Looking for
Well,
$100,000.
we need a motion to
Approve of it.
authorize the $100,000 and for this pilot project, and we'll see where we are in a year.
So moved.
Second.
Are we moving too fast when
Yes.
an ordinance just got put out there and we haven't even looked at that yet? I understand where you're coming from, that you're looking at other options, but we just put an ordinance in place to try to help us with some of this, and now we're saying, that ordinance might not work for us.
No, the ordinance is still there.
Yeah, the ordinance is still there, and
It's
if
still
we
there.
have to use it, we'll use it,
Right.
and we can follow it. I mean, it lays out the steps on the procedures that we'll follow. Mexico's approach was that, let's try this. Let's send out letters, and let's see if we can get volunteers. Hey, yes, this house was passed down from my parents, and I don't want anything to do with it. It's been vacant, it's dilapidated. If you guys are willing to take it down, I'll sign the letter. And we go in, and we don't have to set up the hearing and go through that process.
Right.
There was, just this morning, Dennis showed me, they do a title search on property when we're looking at some of this stuff. He said, based on the paperwork I saw this morning, the last time that the title had been updated was when a lady died, and it was in her will. And the biggest piece of that house that anybody got was 1/8%. And it was an eighth and eighth, and I'm gonna mix these up, but it's an eighth and eighth and eighth, and then it went down to, you get a 24th. All the grandchildren got 1/24 of this property. That was 1963. That was what, 60 years ago? how many generations have come and gone where that eighth has been diluted through 2 generations and is now a 30th?
Yeah.
The number of property owners on that piece of land would be impossible to determine how many there are, and to get them all to sign something.
The thing I'd comment is 80 houses didn't happen overnight.
No.
This has been an ongoing problem that we've,
Is there any?
not going to say ignored, but we haven't approached at all.
But,
And of course, you
Mayor?
haven't approached it, yes.
If you remember this year in the Missouri Municipal League, Independence won one of the awards like our Field Stream did for the house by house, block by block, and their outcome was that contractors ended up helping the city to pitched in and started helping them tear properties down that they thought was sightly, and in hopes that they could maybe buy the land. And so they said that's how they got a lot of theirs down, that independent contractors started helping them because they was doing a good thing.
I think we need to move forward with it. I think we need
Aye.
to try it. I think we need to try it. We've talked about this for years.
This,
It needs to be done. We have the funds. Kathy knows that. I think start it. Go for it. Let's see what happens in the year.
and the process I just explained that Mexico uses, it's not set in stone.
Right.
I mean, we can look at it, and if there's a way to get the money, there's several options that we can look at.
Do we have, currently, do we have the authorities to do what we would need to do in that scenario? I mean, do we need to pass another ordinance? Do we need to do anything that gives us the
Mexico was,
authority to ask for permission, to take legal responsibility, all of that?
Moberly is sending us a complete packet of all their documentation.
Mexico is.
I think I'd like to see this brought back up. Look, give us some time to think about
Sure.
this thing.
Yeah. And as soon
Not
as they
make a
send,
decision in 5 seconds.
as soon as they send us the packet,
We'll know more.
yeah.
We're just,
Very good.
I think part of tonight was just wanting to show you that Dennis is out there looking at options and wanting to get something done and get some of these houses
There's some
removed.
sightly properties.
So the idea of bringing it back next council meeting or the council meeting after that is perfectly acceptable.
So I guess I rescind my motion.
Yeah, I'd like to think about it a little more and
Councilman
see,
Moore.
Okay.
see what their thing is if they're sending it, and then we can look that over.
Councilman Moore, do you rescind your
Rescind
second?
your second.
No, I guess I will.
Excellent, thank
Right.
you.
We didn't have a
And
motion, so.
I still have
We
a
had a motion
concern
and a
about the
second.
money.
We had a motion.
We just
and a second.
got finished spending $300,000
Okay.
to rebuild, or $300,000 more than we expected to rebuild Business 54. We just spent $100,000 to put up new streetlights, and now we're looking at $100,000 for this project. Not saying it isn't needed, but the last time when we talked about $300,000, it sounded like we just cut our reserves in half. Okay. So maybe next time I just like a little more assurance about where the money's coming from. Because we spend a lot of money.
Here's Kathy. There's
Go ahead.
that's our finance girl.
The general fund reserves are significant.
Okay.
And hitting them for $400,000 is not going to cut them in half.
Okay. I misunderstood you then. So, okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis, for investigating
Thank you
that
very
for us.
much.
Thank you. Okay, very good. Table that till next time,
Okay.
or the next future meeting.
I think they
New business, ambulance district building code discussion. You gonna leave this, Dennis?
Dennis?
Ambulance district, you wanna,
Oh, here we go.
Charlie, you wanna address it? Okay.
Well, I'm going to start, and then I'm going to turn it
Okay.
over to representative from our architectural firm. My name's Charles Anderson. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the director of the Callaway County Ambulance District. We, late last year, purchased the old grill building in Tanglewood and a vacant lot to the south of that property, and we're in the process of designing a new main headquarters ambulance facility to replace the one on Hickman Avenue. What we're here tonight for is we need to
address with the council the storm shelter requirements that are included in the building code and essentially ask for a variance. I'm not going to pretend to know all the details, and with that, that's why I'll turn it over to Rick Kuhl from WSKF Architects out of Kansas City, and he can address all of those, I think, questions, concerns that you'll have maybe regarding that.
Well,
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Rick Kuhl, WSKF Architects, 110 Armour Road in North Kansas City. Courtney, did this get distributed? Do you know these copies? Did those?
I do not have those now.
Okay.
No.
Can I distribute these to the council? Is that
Sure.
okay? All right.
We'll be happy to pass it down.
For a nominal fee, we need to recoup some money today.
No, don't charge him.
What I'm handing out, what's being passed around right now, are 3 sheets. Did everybody get a copy?
I like the size of your print.
Thank you. It's my size of print as well. Just an overview. I'm not certain whether you're aware or not. Within the 2015 International Building Code is a provision that certain buildings, certain occupancies are required to comply with what's called the shelter requirement within the building code. That shelter requirement is in reference to the International Code Council ICC 500, which stipulates the shelter design requirements. So as a provision of the 2015 International Building Code is a shelter requirement for certain occupancies, certain uses. Essentially, the ICC 500 is a replication of the FEMA 361 requirements for shelters. And it's essentially a tornado shelter from a design requirement standpoint. What we're here tonight asking for is your consideration for a variance from the ICC 500 requirement. We're not asking for the elimination of a protected space within the building. We are certainly going to provide that. So the top sheet gives you a comparison, if you will, between the ICC 500 standards for shelters, and on the right-hand side is our proposal for what we're considering a hardened space or a hardened protected space within the building. We've tried to provide kind of a line-by-line comparison between the ICC 500 and the proposed shelter requirements on the right-hand side. So I know you all can read, so I'm not going to recite kind of those provisions, but a couple of things that I would like to point out to you in terms of that comparison is that there's a fairly stringent requirement, which is about the 6th or 7th item down on the left-hand side, that says the wind load requirement of 250 miles per hour. And on the right-hand side, our proposal is to provide a structure that is essentially a concrete box within the building that is being expanded that will provide for protection of the occupants of the facility. The space is large enough that it can accommodate 119 occupants within the protected space within the building. One of the things that happens with this box is that when to meet ICC 500 is that there's a stipulation that any particular opening within the envelope that protects the space greater than 3.5 inches square is to be provided with supplementary protection in terms of the protection of that opening. So any piece of conduit that's larger than that, any piece of ductwork that's larger than that, the door opening, window opening, whatever it is, they have to have supplementary protection in terms of protection of the shelter space itself, the ICC 500. So the provision in terms of what we're looking at from a design standpoint is that it is, on two sides of the building, we're going to have concrete walls because they're earth contact. There are basement space on two sides. The other two sides of the box are going to be concrete as well. It could be a concrete masonry wall, CMU wall, but to us, it probably makes sense to go ahead and make that a concrete enclosure. The roof structure will be a concrete roof structure. The provisions of the design that we're proposing would allow the structure above this space to collapse without impacting the structure below, so it's able to support the structure above. So in the event of a storm and the spaces that were above our building were to collapse, it would not impact or affect the performance of the space below. So it would still support that structure. Understanding that this building is considered an essential facility in the building code. It's a Category 4 structure. It already has inherently in that a higher performance requirement. So there are certain facilities, fire, police, EMS, 911, hospitals, those facilities are Category 4 facilities and are required to be designed to a higher design requirement than other occupancies. So we already have the requirement that to meet the 1.5 importance factor that's associated with the Category 4, and that applies to the entire structure, not just necessarily to the space within the proposed building that we're going to be providing for a hardened structure. So the drawing that's up here is the highlighted area that's in yellow is, so let me back up a little bit. So the existing building, the south wall of the existing building is kind of this offset wall that I'm tracing the cursor around. Everything that's to the left of that, which would be to the south, is new construction. This outline that you see that goes off further is actually the structure above. So the apparatus bays, if you will, for the ambulances are off to the left side. So the area that's in that's colored is the proposed area for the hardened space within the building expansion. So the two sides, the one that's on the left and to the top, are for the most part earth contact. So they're a concrete foundation wall where earth protected on those two sides. On the bottom side and to the right would be, the bottom side would be to the east or towards the lake, if you're familiar with that, with this site. And then to the right is to the existing structure. So these two walls are going to be cast in place concrete as well. As an essential facility, is to be maintained and occupied, obviously, when other facilities are not, which requires that this facility be provided with an emergency generator. The entire facility will be backed up, if you will, with the emergency generator, so it's 100% capacity in terms of providing for the continued use or operation of this facility in the event that power is lost to the facility. So this is on the lower level. As you might recall, there's a walkout level, which is the lower level, and the upper level is also accessed from the west side. And so there is an upper level to this facility as well. You know, somewhat in summary, what we're requesting is that you consider a variance from the ICC 500 that would not prescribe for the items that are on the left-hand side of the sheet and allow us to build a hardened structure, which we believe would be a very durable structure. If I were in the building, that's where I would go in the event of a storm, because we feel that that's going to be a protected space and a space that will protect really, I said, up to 119 occupants in the building So I guess with that, I'd answer any questions.
Is the hardened storm shelter a code requirement of some code? Or is this your
Isn't this the one that
definition?
goes back to the 2009?
Yeah, so in all of the facilities that we design for public safety facilities, there is a hardened space within them, whether it's required by code or not. This hardened structure that we're proposing, one of the challenges with this, what we're asking for, is that it's not a prescribed design requirement. It's a design requirement that we've applied to the structure, but to say, so I asked the engineer, so the structural engineer, I said, you know, if we were to assess kind of what provisions, what we're proposing as a hardened structure would withstand, the response was, well, would withstand, if this were a coastal facility, it would withstand the coastal wind design requirements for that facility. So if we were in Florida, or any coastal area, it would withstand the winds within the coastal area that this facility would be located.
Senator, I have a question.
Absolutely.
You talk about a hardened area, but from what I'm looking at here, on your plan view of the, I guess it would be the north wall, that doesn't show concrete. Does that create a problem?
It will be.
I mean, you only got 3 sides of
all 4 sides will be concrete. It's a concrete box.
Doesn't show that.
Yeah, graphically it may not represent that, but its 4 sides will be concrete. Our provision for hardening the building will be a concrete box. So it'll be 4 sides of concrete and a concrete roof deck, if you will, or a second or floor structure, which would be above.
So are you asking for a variance for this structure only? Or are you asking for us to go and back up from the 2015 code to the 2006 code?
I think that's a question for Dennis.
Okay, which is why he's up here.
When I first met with the architects, they asked me what code we were under. And we were under the 2000, we adopted it in November 1st of 2017. And in the 2015 code, it requires in all emergency operation facilities a storm shelter.
Right.
And it holds them to the ICC 500 standards that they have to design it to, which after meeting with them and doing some research, a lot of the cities and municipalities have looked at that and have either deleted the provision because of the cost, or they have made amendments to it. And so what they are asking is not out of the ordinary. Several cities have already done that. If that's answering your question.
No.
So what did we do at our own?
I think I know what you're wanting to know, Councilman. I think the only thing we're requesting an exception for is the storm shelter requirements. The rest of the building would be built to 2015.
To 2015.
They're going to build a variance for that storm shelter.
Yeah.
They're going to put a storm shelter in. It's just not going to meet the ICC 500 requirements.
Ballard, when we adopted the 2015 code last year, we adopted the code with some exceptions. One was the sprinkler systems in short buildings and residency. So a new house didn't have to have a sprinkler system was one of the exceptions we accepted.
Okay.
Based on what we believe would have to happen is we would have another ordinance, and because this requirement is not in the 2006, and 2006 is the last code that we had, we would just pass an ordinance to eliminate this from the building code. And it only affects the schools and the fire stations, the police stations, and ambulances, and DOCs, and that kind of thing. It wouldn't affect anything else in the building code.
Yes.
So on the new fire station that's on Tennyson Road, did we go to the ICC 500 standard
No.
for that?
It's not retroactive.
It was not the code, that was not the code that was in place at the
Now,
time.
Back then.
now if, like, the school were to build an addition that houses 50, 60, 70 people, then it would be retroactive for the whole school.
No, and they're looking at that right now. It would just be the addition.
Okay. That's kind of the way I read the code, but whatever. That's not relevant to this right now.
I'm not gonna say the problem is we took a big leap from 2006 to 15, where a lot of cities are, they went to 12, and then they went to 15.
Right.
And so that's where the big changes came.
So what you're asking us to do is take the storm shelter requirements of the 2015 code, wait a minute, let me finish, and set a waiver that we have to meet the 2006 requirement, no?
The 2006 doesn't have the requirements.
Okay.
It doesn't even address the storm shelter.
So would we eliminate
Yes.
the storm?
That's what we.
Okay. So then, how are we approving this concrete structure then?
We would
as
be
part of this
approving,
waiver?
we would be approving their proposed design. It would not meet.
Not us.
What's that?
I mean, none of us are professional engineers, right?
Yeah.
We're approving the waiver from the building code.
We would be saying they don't have to put one in. If they want to do anything out there is above and beyond our requirement.
But
But the motion we're not making tonight is to completely eliminate section 423.3 from our current building code. We're just talking about a waiver for this one building.
No, we're
this
not.
one
We're
section.
no, we're not. We're talking
Yeah.
about
We are-
eliminating.
we are full
You don't have the authority to issue a waiver.
Okay.
We
Well,
would-
thank
we
you.
would
That's
change-
where you were going, is
we
we
would
don't
change-
have-
say that again now?
We would amend the code to eliminate that section
Yeah.
from our building code.
And this was there, I assume, because of Joplin. Right?
It had something to do, it wasn't just Joplin, but there were several.
Well, I mean, for Missouri.
Right.
Yeah.
For Missouri.
I mean, Oklahoma
But-
City had
Right.
a big problem too.
Question.
Lawrence, I believe Lawrence, Kansas, they completely eliminated section 423.
I got a
Was-
question there.
Sure.
If we eliminate this, this is a standard that come out, and we eliminate it, and something happens, what kind of legal responsibility are we gonna end up with?
I don't think we would have any additional liability in that situation because it's the ambulance district would still have the option of building to a higher standard.
But we're gonna tell them it's okay to build it below this standard.
If you eliminate that.
Yeah,
But
if
what
we
you had
vote
the-
tonight.
But you had the opportunity to do.
And
when
we
you
won't have a
amended.
legal liability if somebody gets killed in there.
I don't think anybody can answer that, Rich.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question. You're asking us to do that.
Well, just as a comment about that, I think, when you adopt the building codes, you have the options of adopting the code as written or variances from that. So there are other jurisdictions that have opted out, if you will, of the standard for the ICC 500, just because it's a provision that they thought they didn't need to implement for their particular jurisdiction. So my assumption would be is that if the option for any provision of the code were accepted from the code, then it's just a code requirement for the provision for the building code.
Okay.
In some ways, Richard, you'd have the same argument on the sprinkler system
Right.
that we opted out.
Yeah, I know.
So, you know,
I think a good analogy of that is if I go buy a car and the option is I put a 150 mile an hour tire on there or a 100 mile tire on there, and the manufacturer decided to put the 100 on there, and I drove at 150 and had a blowout and I was killed, who's responsible for that?
You shouldn't have been driving 150 miles an hour.
Well, he's just using an example, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
okay. So what we would need is an indication of whether you want to consider amending the, or opting this provision out of our regular building code, and then we can put together a ordinance.
So you just need okay to do the ordinance, or?
We would need, yes, and then we will talk to you, we'll bring that ordinance to you, or that change in the ordinance.
So you will get another option to discuss it.
Yeah. Okay. So,
And we can check on we'll get Murma to give us an answer on the liability question between now and first read.
So you need a motion for us to okay to do the ordinance?
To draft the
Yes.
ordinance.
So moved.
your instructions,
I'll
okay.
second that, okay.
Very good. I have a
Draw
motion and a
okay.
second for the administration to put together an ordinance to exempt this ICC 500 standard out of our building code. Okay. Everyone understand the ordinance? Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just point of order question, because the ordinance we're looking at isn't about a specific building anymore. It's about the building code for the
right.
entire thing.
It never was about the building.
No, but with that, I was going to abstain from any vote this evening that was specific about the ambulance district because I sit on that board.
Yeah.
But because we're not looking specifically at the ambulance district, I don't need to abstain from that, correct?
I don't think you have any
Thank you.
any conflict of interest at all.
That's what I wanted to make sure of.
Okay.
Just one more question. So if they added on to the school, they would not have to go, or if we added on to the fire station, they would not have to go to the ICC 500, and they're just adding on to this building. What's the difference?
This is not it's basically a new construction because they're adding a new building, so it's considered a new facility. And under the 2015, it's emergency operation. But there are stipulations when you add on to an existing building. And I'd have to, let me do some more research on this and get back to you on that, because there are stipulations on the addition.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to call for the question.
Too late.
All those in favor?
Wait a minute. Wayne was trying to ask you a question.
He's going to want a break.
Wayne wants a break.
He wants a break.
Oh,
Let's
you
get
want a
that
break?
Yeah,
moving.
we can have a vote.
Sorry.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no.
No.
Can I have a show of hands on the noes?
Thank you.
On the no?
No.
Yeah. Very good. 2 noes. Okay. You got those.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you. We'll bring that to you and we'll continue to have the discussion. So thank you very much. I do have a request for a break. So let's stand adjourned here for about 5 minutes and we'll be back. In order. Our next item on the agenda will be the Chromebook discussion.
Oh, okay.
That was requested on the change of the agenda.
Is it still running?
It's still running, yes. We're still great on battery life, so we're doing fine, surprisingly.
Haven't wore it out yet?
Haven't worn it out yet.
So, is there any further discussion on that, or someone want to make a motion? What?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like
On
to make
what?
a motion.
On the Chromebook?
Oh.
Yes.
I'd like to move to give authority for the city clerk to purchase at least 10 Chromebooks in support of the city council members or for the city council to use.
Okay. Is any,
Second.
very good, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion of that motion?
Just anything, in case anybody we did talk about this at our planning meeting that started at 6:30. So if anybody's in the crowd that wondered, we did have that discussion. It's not just, it didn't just get added to be run through.
We're gonna look at going digital, going with the digital age. So. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Very good. Although, if there's not any further discussion, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, I hear no no's, yeses have it. Now we move to council concerns. This is the time that you can bring to the council anything that's not on the agenda that you would like to discuss. Let me just go the route I've been going. If you have a concern, if you'd raise your hand, and Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, I've got just a couple of items. I don't know if the council members, I know you all get the City County magazine. There's two good articles in there. One on page 8 about the smart cells, and one on page 16 about when the levee breaks. I think they're well worth reading articles that you should probably take a look at when you got spare time. Also, the second thing is, I spoke with Dennis. He's gone. Oh, no, there he is.
He's hiding back there.
I spoke with Dennis a couple of weeks ago, and it was about this service station up here that they were digging the tanks up at.
Sure.
And when they just kind of flew in there and started demoing it. So I asked him about it and if they had had a building permit. And he kind of indicated to me at that time that that was one of the things that he thought the city council ought to look at is the cost of the permits. He said there's not much incentive for someone to come in and get a $5 demolition permit to tear down a project like that, and I kind of agree with him. So I'd like to see in one of our upcoming work sessions that we discuss the permits that we issue to people and the price that they pay for them. That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay.
Because you think they're too cheap or too high, or?
Well, $5 to tear down a whole building, and dig up 3 tanks and haul them off
For
and put the
$5.
dirt. I mean, that's not much incentive for them people to come in. In fact, they hadn't come in and got one.
Yeah, here we go.
Richard, we do not require a permit for what they did. We contacted the building owner, and he hasn't decided if he's going to take the building down.
Well,
They had the canopy down. They had the canopy down before we knew it.
You know, and that's
it was on the ground.
We even got that problem. I mean, they dug up fuel oil tanks that looked like they had big holes in the side of them. I mean, what kind of permits did they have to even do something like that?
I mean, the city does not require a permit for that.
I understand that.
For the
but
tanks,
EPA
yeah.
does.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
it's actually one of the Superfund, or it's not Superfund, but insurance projects.
And
It's
I
big.
mean, I didn't, of course, I don't go, I ain't by there 8 hours a day, but, you know, I didn't see it, but they dug the tanks out, shoved the dirt back in the
Missed the
hole.
whole thing.
Well, maybe we can do that at the city warehouse. I mean, you just see where I'm coming from.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. We'll discuss it. Okay. Who else has a concern? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. We'll move on to resolutions. Resolution 3111 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Twellman Construction for grave excavation services. Councilman Stone, would you please present 3111 for consideration?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I present resolution number 3311 by title only. Resolution authorizing the mayor, on behalf of the city of Fulton, Missouri, to execute a contract with Twellman Construction Company of Fulton, Missouri, for grave excavation services and establishing an effective date. I make a motion to adopt resolution number 3311 at tonight's council meeting.
Second?
Very good. Thank you. I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 3311. Any further discussion of the motion? Bill?
This is basically a pass-through. All the funeral homes in town know what these rates are and what these charges are, and but since it's our cemetery, we are in charge of authorizing him to be the grave digger. And we establish the rate that the funeral homes are going to get charged. Okay? He's been doing the work for us for several years, and I have received no complaints.
Very good. Any further discussion? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Is the price different on weekends? Same?
I
doesn't
believe
say
it's the
that.
same, it's a flat rate.
Flat rate? If they get there later than 4 o'clock, is it a difference?
My understanding is the grave digging services are a flat rate. The city of Fulton, if we're doing something for a cremation, we have our own rates because that's a service that we can handle. So we do have different rates for weekends or after hour time.
Well, is there a cutoff time for weekends when we would stop?
I'd say since this is a third-party vendor, we don't really have, that's not something that the city of Fulton handles. That would be something he
Just
handles.
wondering, because I was told by one that you had to be there on weekends before 4 o'clock. And I wanted to know where it came from.
Sure.
Other than that, I have 5.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those call for the question. All those in favor of adopting resolution 3311, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Yeses have it. We'll now move on to ordinances. First reading, bill number 1502 is an ordinance that requests the rezoning of certain land at 54 and Rice Road. Councilman Vaughn, would you please present bill number 1502 for consideration?
Bill 1502, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance certain lands in the city of Fulton, Missouri, located at Rice Road and US 54, and establish effective date. I make a motion to place Bill 1502 on the table.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to place 1502 on the table. There's no discussion on that. Call for the question. All those in favor of tabling 1502, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no.
No.
Can I get a show of hands, please? On the nose.
Show of hands on the nose, please.
Excuse me, I'm confused now. What are we voting to do?
We're placing it on the table
Put it on the table and leave it.
for consideration at a future date.
Instead of
Oh.
voting tonight.
So yes.
We're
vote.
not voting to approve the rezoning.
That's correct.
We're voting to table it. Okay,
If you vote yes, you vote in the table. If you vote
I understand.
Correct.
I understand where
Yes,
we're
you're
going,
voting to
so
Okay.
All right.
So if
we
you
can-
voted no originally, please raise those
I
hands.
vote to not table it.
Okay, so that would be no.
Okay.
And anyone else that was a no? Thank you very much.
Okay. So that's a tie. I'll vote not to table it.
I thought there was only
Okay.
3.
Rick?
So Mayor Benton has broken the tie by voting not to table.
So that means that the bill is for consideration. Is there any further discussion of the
Yes.
bill?
I would have really liked to have everybody consider if some project was going to be held in your district that your constituents decided that they didn't want, would you still vote yes? I don't believe you would, or you're not doing yourself any justice from the perspective. I was out. I had to campaign and go out and visit with people. I was running opposed, and that's 100% what they said. No, they were not interested. in having this. I'm representing my constituents. I ask you to take that into consideration.
I have
So-
some. I also have some. Another thing that we should consider is the zoning commission did get a motion to rezone, could not get a second from anyone on the zoning commission. They think the property should be left zoned as per the plans for the city of Fulton was. And I don't see a reason why we should change that. Also, while we're on that subject, I have 2 letters from Zimmerman Properties, and the earliest letter says they propose 24 or 48 units. The first letter was 60. So they're going to build that and then leave us a buffer, but they're really wanting to build 60 units. I don't get it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
So-
Let me interrupt here. I jumped the gun there. We still don't have a motion to consider this.
Correct.
So, Mr. Vaughn, you want to give us a motion to consider it
For second reading.
for first reading?
I thought he did that.
He's already done first reading. It would be for second reading at the next council.
Next meeting.
Oh, first, okay.
But
Second
you don't
reading.
have a second for that.
No,
Courtney?
it's first, we haven't read it yet tonight. Well, he's
We
read
haven't.
it.
But his motion was to table.
My motion was to table.
Yeah.
We don't have a motion to have it for first read at tonight's meeting yet.
Mr. Mayor,
So I should read 502 again, right?
If you want to make a motion,
Yeah.
No, you want
Or
I'll make it.
just make the motion to consider it tonight, or whatever.
But it has to have a second.
That's correct.
and then it has to
made the
pass
motion
to
to
go to
table.
second reading.
Yeah. I
and they
made,
voted against.
so what am I supposed to do now? I made a motion to
was
table.
it.
That's right.
And that
And
was
that was
tabled.
He
declined.
wants to take.
So now we need a motion to consider it.
Okay, who's gonna do it? I'm not gonna get it.
I'll do it.
Go ahead.
We need to discuss it, and that's the
Sure.
only way we're going to get it to discuss.
Please,
Bill number 1502, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance certain land in the city of Fulton, Missouri, located at Rice Road and US Business 54, and establish an effective date. I make a motion, we approve at first reading.
okay, very good. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Steve? Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance 1502 for second
So
reading.
now we talk about it.
Okay, now it's open, and we'll continue on with the discussion.
Okay.
And any other questions?
So, John and Richard, it sounds like your guys' opposition, and it sounds like their opposition, is against the fact that an apartment complex could be built there. Is that correct?
If we change the zoning, if we reclassify that as a zoning, they can build as many housing units on that piece of property as they see fit. No, city has no say in it whatsoever. I know that they say that they'll leave a buffer, but there's no guarantee. Even Bill at the last zoning meeting even got up and told everybody there, you got to remember, if we change it, you lose control, the city loses control. We have no control over that piece of property. And
Doesn't,
Go ahead.
let's just say Zimmerman comes in with a proposal to put in X number of apartment buildings. Don't they have to go to engineering
Not once it's
to
changed.
get approval for open space and all the other stuff that you're supposed to put in?
Yes, they do. But once it's changed, all they got to do is give that, and as long as it meets the code or the building requirements, they got to approve it. They can't say, no, you can't build them apartments there. Right now, we have that right.
right now, C3, if I understand, you essentially can only put in a shopping center, like the Commons or the shopping center at the north end of town.
Walmart,
Whatever.
yeah, big stuff.
That's correct.
Right.
If we go to C2, you can put anything from a truck stop down to single-family homes.
I would take.
Not,
I mean, that's just, that gives
yeah,
you your.
I mean, that's the zoning code. But that isn't what that piece of property was designated to be for.
Right now, that piece of property is almost too small to do anything with in this, as a C3. Dennis and I did some research on that. Would you come forward, please, and reveal what we discovered?
Yeah, I talked with Wayne today, and he was asking a few questions on it, and the property is too small for what it is zoned. It is zoned C3, strictly commercial, and it's a large-scale commercial, whereas C2 still allows for commercial, but it's at a smaller scale.
Okay, right. Instead of a Walmart, it could be a 7-Eleven or something.
Yeah, but a Walmart's not going to look at it. It's not big
Oh,
enough
of course
for a
not,
Walmart.
no.
It's not big enough for a shopping center.
Sure.
Even the shopping center here on the north end of town where Shoe Sensation is, it wouldn't fit there. It's just not big enough.
So basically, we're doing an injustice to Mr. Bell if we don't allow the change.
So far, we
bought it as
property.
C3.
I think you guys are only talking about what's being talked about being rezoned. Right now, the entire property is C3.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
the entire property is 25
So
acres?
No, the entire property is what, 6 acres?
6.5, isn't it?
Six.
The
Oh,
whole
it's under.
corner?
Right
Yes, yes.
right at 7 acres.
6 or 7 acres. Yeah, right.
So you can't build anything on there, huh?
What's that?
So you can't build anything on there? Still-
Oh, I'm not saying you can't, but a larger scale commercial property would not fit on that.
No one has wanted to in 10 years.
That's right.
As far as,
right,
I mean,
correct.
yeah, I can't,
I mean, we
Yeah.
can't speculate what might, we can't say what somebody wants to do, but at the moment, zoned at C3, no one has chosen to do anything
Right.
on that property
Right.
based on its current zoning.
Sure, he hasn't.
yes.
That's because there's no growth in that end of town. You know, that's the only piece of commercial property from there to Tennyson Road. That's the only piece. You come off of Highway 54, which is a major intersection, and you're gonna build houses on it. There's no commercial property. Everything that's on the opposite side of that road is either county or a cemetery.
No, there's C2,
Very little.
there's C2 commercial property in that area. There's several
There's two
pieces
little
of,
houses that are,
and I'm talking in the area.
I mean, I've seen the map.
The C2, the request for the C2 zoning would fit that area, with what's in the area.
Sure,
No, you're not getting what I'm saying.
that
But
does
it-
make sense.
And we're talking about infrastructure, you know, and sewer. We couldn't even give a sewer up to the rental company.
I mean,
It's up the road, but now we're saying that you got the infrastructure there, it's good for them, but we didn't have it there for the rental place across the road.
Well, the situation on
That's
the
in the county.
the rental store was outside the city limits.
Correct, that's what I'm saying. The stuff on the opposite side of 54 is county.
yeah.
So
You're correct.
if everything goes there, we give up this piece of commercial property and it gets built on the west side of 54, that's county money, not city money.
On the west side of 54?
East.
No, I understand what you're
East side,
saying.
east side, right?
He meant
East side of business.
54 is county.
The main 54 highway,
Yeah.
what's on the west side of that is county.
Other
Where
way.
Central, where the
Other way,
electric
Richard.
company is.
East side.
Other way.
This side, on the east side,
Oh, all the way across Highway 50.
yeah, all the way
Not
across,
business.
all the way across.
REA.
Everything over
Okay, I
there.
see.
So the only piece of property is here till you get to Tennyson Road.
Yeah, I see. I just can't.
That you,
That is on
you,
C3?
yes.
That is on C3? Yeah, I'd have to look at the map to
Yeah.
confirm that.
I mean, you only got Kettle's property and then you got the cemetery.
And then you got one
You're not
house,
gonna build
you got
commercial
Gibbs House.
property on the cemetery. That's here nor there.
I do have a process question.
Sure.
If planning and zoning did not get a second, did not vote on this recommendation, how did this ordinance reach city council? If
Doesn't
it
have
did
to
not
have
come
approval.
through planning and zoning?
It does not have to have an approval from
It
PO.
doesn't have to.
It does
Okay.
not.
Yeah, I don't know why we have a board.
Okay,
They are just giving you their recommendation.
understand.
And they didn't
But
give
they
either
didn't
way.
give one,
so
so
They
I
didn't
got
give one.
That's right.
didn't know how it got here without that recommendation.
Well, I would
Yeah,
consider
even
that
a
a
no-
no recommendation.
It's required. that we
Would
meet
still
up.
come to us.
They gave us a no
Not
recommendation.
required.
Yeah, they give us
Even
a
if-
no.
Even if the recommendation had been yes or no, it does not necessarily, that, you guys don't have to follow that.
Okay.
They did give us a no by not getting a second on their motion.
That's true.
Okay.
Technically, they didn't give you a recommendation at all. It wasn't
Right.
to no, it
Man,
was
that
just
ain't
no
happened
recommendation.
before over the years.
But we do have a motion on the floor and a second
Okay,
for second reading.
if there's not any further discussion, I'm going to call for the question.
Well,
All those in favor of advancing bill number 1502 to second reading, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
No.
And all those opposed, no.
No.
Nope.
May I have a show of hands on the no? 1, 2, 3.
No, you.
He's right.
So that's,
Just no.
that's
4 to 4.
It's tied again.
The mayor will will vote to move it to second reading.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
That figure.
Look at it next time.
Okay.
Hold on just a moment, please. Mr. Shiverdecker, were you a no vote?
Yes.
Okay, then we have
5-3.
five
No.
no votes.
No, Mr.
No.
Shilen was not a no
You were
vote.
not a no vote.
I was a yes, I just,
He was a
You just
yes.
had your hand up. Okay, I'm with
He-
you. That's okay. I apologize.
Is that correct?
Mr. Shilen was a yes vote. So we have 4, and Mayor Benton broke the tie by moving it to second reading at the next scheduled meeting.
Okay.
Very good. Very good. Let's move on to bill number 1503, which is an ordinance that changes the name of Valley Road to Easy Street. Per the property owner request,
Look at those.
Mr. Councilman Braun, would you please read bill number 1503 by title only?
Bill number 1503, an ordinance renaming River Valley Road to Easy Street and establishing an effective date. I make a motion to adopt resolution 1503 at tonight, or excuse me, that is not correct.
Second
Bill
reading. Bill number 1503
1503.
for second reading at the next meeting.
Second reading at the next meeting, fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
That works. Okay, it's now, I have a motion and a second to advance bill number 1503,
And-
second reading.
I don't think I got a second. Did I miss that?
Second.
Okay, thank you
Oh,
very
I was
much.
too quiet, I guess.
You were,
Not sure if that's ever been said about you.
Okay. Is there any discussion or questions on this motion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor of advancing 1503, second reading, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, very good, thank you. Let's move on to bill number 1504, which is an ordinance that makes some budget adjustments to the 2017 budget, or excuse me, 2017 results. And I guess the budget also. Councilman Shiverdecker, would you please present bill number 1503 by title only?
Yes, sir. Bill number 1504, an ordinance authorizing amendments to the City of Fulton budget for the fiscal year 2017 as outlined in Article 8, Financial Procedures, Section 8.8, Amendments after adoption, Paragraph C, transferred to appropriations, City of Fulton Charter, and establishing an effective date. I make a motion we advance Bill 1504 to our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Kay.
I was just going to say I've included a sheet with the departments that are under budget, over budget, and then the justification, which explains in what areas each department that was over actually went over budget.
Okay.
And in summary, we had a good year. We only adjust expenditures, not revenues.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions of Kathy? Okay, everyone understands the motion. Very good. Hearing no questions, we'll move on. I'll call for the question. All those in favor of advancing bill number 1504 for second reading, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hearing no no's, yeses have it. We'll move, we'll now consider bill number 1504, an ordinance that authorize a plat number 1 for Willow Creek subdivision. Councilman Simmons, would you please present 1505, title only?
Bill number 1505, an ordinance authorizing the mayor on behalf of the City of Fulton, Missouri to approve Plat 1 for Willow Creek subdivision. I make a motion to approve or to advance Bill 1505 for second reading.
Second.
Very good, thank you. I have a motion and second to advance 1505, and we're now ready for discussion. Go right ahead, sir. Thank you
Sure.
for being with us.
For the record, I'm Bart Corman with Lewis and Beatty Surveyors and Engineers out of Warrenton, Missouri. Bring to you today the plat. Went through planning and zoning with the sketch plat and the final plat. Present that proposing 20 lots south of Collier Lane and for single-family residential in this plat, and I'll answer any questions anybody may have.
Prior to actual development, Kyle will go through the site plan and make sure everything's all laid out correctly, and it will be built to our standard.
Any questions?
These are single-family homes, is that, or?
Yeah, in this plat, there's single-family homes. We do have a spot, a reserve tract a little further down that maybe end up being multifamily, but or commercial of some sort. But right now, the first phase, we're going to do single-family. Most of it's proposed single-family is the concept plan there.
Okay.
So eventually, this is going to end up like 120 houses.
Right.
Very good, thank you. Hearing no more questions, call for the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good. The yeses have it.
Hallelujah.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Looks like
All right,
good project.
cool.
Thank you. Okay. Now move on to bill number 1506, which is a bill that has to do with financing services training officers under the Violence Against Women Act. Councilman Stone, would you please present bill number 1506 by title only?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I present bill number 1506 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor on behalf of the City of Fulton, Missouri, to sign all necessary documents in relation to the 2018 to 2019 Services Training Officers Prosecutors Violence Against Women's Act, STOP VAWA, grant memorandum of understanding between the County of Callaway, City of Holt Summit, the City of Fulton, Missouri, and to issue funds as specified. I make a motion to place bill number 1506 for second reading at the next scheduled council meeting.
Second.
Very good, thank you. Have a motion second to advance bill number 1506. Is there any discussion of that motion?
Yes, sir. How much is the grant for?
Almost 5.
Huh? Oh, I just wonder, we have all the breakdowns of the 3 entities, but it never tells us what the grant was for.
We'll try and find out for next read.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to have that.
Thank you.
The total, good point.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, very good. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Yeses have it. Thank you. We'll now consider second reading ordinances. We have an ordinance 1501 that has to do with a change in the city code for parking, stopping, and standing, et cetera, specifically on Hickman Avenue. Councilman Moore, would you please present 1501 by title only?
Bill number 1501, an ordinance amending chapter 110, traffic vehicles, section 110-340, parking on certain streets prohibited or limited, Fulton City Code by prohibiting stopping, standing, and parking on a portion of Hickman Avenue and establishing an effective date. I move this for final passage at tonight meeting by title only, if there's no objections.
Need to go to a third reading.
It'll be
wouldn't it?
third reading,
That's
but
what he
I know what you mean.
Yep.
We're good. And that was
Second.
a second?
Second.
Very good. Thank you. I have a motion second to advance bill number 1501 to third reading. Any questions or comments?
So I assume this is to reduce any traffic jams for the buses to get in and the parents to pick up their kids, and is that correct?
That's the intent. Probably more to stop traffic jams from the congestion so people can get in and out of the street.
Same
More
answer,
than,
yeah.
than parents picking up students. It's more for people to be able to pass through the street. An ambulance couldn't get through without this coming through.
Okay.
Very good.
Did we decide it was one side of the street or the other?
Yes.
It's actually both sides of the street. One side goes from 7th Street to the water crossing, and then the residential side goes from 7th Street to the beginning of that residential area.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, hearing no further discussion or questions, call for the question. All those in favor of advancing bill number 1501, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, very good. Did we do that for tonight? Or?
That'll be for tonight.
Okay, very good.
Councilman Moore.
Councilman Moore, would you please present 1501 for third reading?
Bill number 1501, an ordinance amending chapter 110, traffic and vehicles, section 110-340, parking on certain streets prohibited or limited, Fulton City Code by prohibiting stopping, standing, and parking on a portion of Hickman Avenue and establishing an effective date. I move this for final passage at tonight's meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion after the motion for and a second? Any further discussion?
There was no question from the school or the superintendent's office about this ordinance, correct?
No parking signs are already there. We're just making them so you can enforce them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of advancing bill number 1501 for final passage, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. The yeses have it. Okay. You've heard bill number 1501 presented 3 times, and it's now time for final consideration. As the clerk reads the roll, please signify your decision by yes or no.
Okay, Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Reclue,
Yes.
Mr. Shiverdecker,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Braun,
Yes.
and Mr. Shiland. Yes. 8 council members affirmative.
Very good, thank you. That bill will pass then. We The announcements are there, and I'm not going to read them. I don't think there's anything that we need to emphasize at this point. I do not have a need for an executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I did have one item that I recalled that I wanted to bring up during council members, and it was simply a thank you for facilitating the meeting between the city council, the school board, and the Chamber of Commerce attendees last week. That was a very constructive meeting, and it was much appreciated.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Very good.
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Okay. Yeses have it. We stand adjourned.